This is Lightning Power Lunch, presented by Reef Rum on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
Yeah, it's so close. It's the NHL, and we've been on the right side of it a lot of times when you don't deserve it, and tonight maybe you think you deserve at least something out of the game, especially to get through that PK in the third. But like I said, at the end of the day, the final score is all that matters with this group, and we didn't find a way. And like I said before, we want to keep growing here and keep believing and keep trusting each other out there and find a way to play some winning hockey.
Yeah, winning hockey. So far early on, that has not been the case. It's ugly. I get it. It's not great. Blowing leads, making wrong decisions, costly decisions at the wrong time. And, even the goaltending that's been really good. I think Vasi probably would like to have the second goal?
Second goal
night?
back.
Yeah, I think he'd
sure.
like to have that back. So what do they say, partner? When it rains, it pours a little bit.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about it for the next hour. The Lightning have an opportunity here over the weekend to put some wins together, but man, they need to do it and do it quickly. Dave Mishkin's my partner. Steve Ersnick is the producer. At Bolts Radio is where you can interact with us, but we're everywhere. Facebook Live, we're on YouTube, we are on X. So if you're watching us, hello. And
hello.
We're here for you guys.
Yeah,
as well.
we can. Do we need to pull out our therapist couch for today's show?
I think we do that a little bit every day.
Do a little therapy.
I don't know if we got to work overtime a little bit to.
Well, what we have to say may not make the fans who are upset feel better, because we tend to tell it like we see it.
Where do we want to
But
start?
I don't know.
Where do we want to start?
So let me start here, Greg.
Okay.
I see similarities in the end of the game between the game last night and the opener against Ottawa, in that the Lightning were minutes, and in the case of last night, less than a minute away from getting to overtime and getting a point, and they gave up a goal. To say it was an inopportune time would be a gross understatement. Less than 2 minutes left in regulation against Ottawa, they end up losing in regulation. Less than a minute left in the third period last night, they lose in regulation. The Lightning have lost 4 games in regulation. 3 of those 4, they have been tied entering the third period. And this is a bugaboo of mine. If you are tied entering the third period, you have to prioritize winning or tying that period to at least get points. Now, the Lightning had one game where they were tied going into the third, the Washington game, and they did get it to overtime. And then one game where they were down going into the third, and they got it tied in the third, the Detroit game, and they got it to overtime. But these 3 other games, certainly 2 of them, those games have to get to overtime. The Ottawa game on opening night and last night's game. The Columbus game, they gave up the go-ahead goal early in the third. It was a little bit different, but still, they were 20 minutes away from getting a point out of that game. So they have squandered points, for sure. That is the biggest similarity to me between last night's game and the game on opening night. In many other aspects, though, the games were very dissimilar. The Lightning played a lot better last night than they did in the opening night loss to Ottawa. And in fact, they played a lot better last night than they did in most of the other games they have played this year. Third period in Detroit, they threw the kitchen sink at the Red Wings. We understand that might have been their best period of the season. I thought as a whole, they played pretty well in Boston and Washington. Washington, they had a hard time generating scoring chances. Boston, they generated scoring chances. Maybe they wanted to limit some of the chances against. Last night, just about every major kind of category that you look at to determine like which team is leaning on the other, which team is dictating play, which team is imposing its will on the opponent, the Lightning were on the right side of the ledger. That has not happened a lot this year. Last night it happened. And they did a lot of good things last night.
Yeah.
They did. So process and outcome. I thought on opening night, and I know you can couch it a couple different ways, like they had the 3-1 lead on opening night. I didn't like their game opening night. If you heard the show after that game, I came on the show and said I'm extremely disappointed in kind of what unfolded last night, meaning opening night. I feel far less disappointed about what I saw last night. I'm disappointed as somebody who's following this team and covering this team and broadcasting for this team, that they squandered at least a point for sure, and maybe two. But if we're just basing on like, what did they do last night? Like, they played with energy, they played with high compete, they took it to the Hawks. Yes, there were parts that we can get to that probably need to be better, even beyond the big mistake at the end of the game, which we will get to. I sometimes refer to games in this context, Greg. If you play that game 20 times, understanding that it's going to unfold exactly the same way, the same level of chances for and against, flow of play and all that. I think you play that game 20 times, probably 19 out of 20, the Lightning at least get a point out of that game, and way more than half the time they're winning the game outright. So if you can produce performances like that, you are going to be getting points. Now, there's no guarantee that they can replicate what they did last night, tomorrow and Sunday and beyond, but we can look at this as a positive that they produced a game like this against a team that, has gotten off to a pretty good start. I know people are like, oh, the Hawks are going to miss the playoffs. Like, they have some good young players. We saw that last night. Wyatt Kaiser is going to be a really good player. He was a college teammate of Dominic James's. I was really impressed with him last night. The pronunciation police should have called me yesterday because I mispronounced Nazar's name. I corrected you. I don't think you quite had it right. I had it wrong. I don't know why. I called the guy
what is
last
it again?
year and gave him Nazar. Yeah.
Nice.
He's a hell of a player. I mean, he had a power play goal. He made the play that led to the winning goal.
Yeah.
I mean, these are young guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bedard, we know about him.
Sure.
Like, I think that they are an up-and-coming team. I don't know where they're going to finish this year. Spencer Knight, that looks like a good move for Chicago. He played well last night.
Yeah,
so, look, if you were an NHL team, unless you're like the San Jose Sharks from a couple of years ago, remember they came in and they just didn't even look like an NHL team. I think they improved a little bit from that point onward. Like, you got good players on the other side. Let's see where the Hawks finish when all is said and done this year, or even halfway through the year. Let's see where they are. Don't just dismiss them because they've missed the playoffs the last few years. Eventually, with the young players they have added, they are going to improve for sure. And they have a superstar in Bedard, although I thought the Lightning actually did a pretty good job on him last night.
Right.
So for the Lightning to play that way is encouraging. Now, what didn't I like? Certainly the end of the game. And I wrote my extra shift column shortly after the game. I probably should have looked at the goal again before I wrote it. But what I took out of the play when I saw it live was you have the puck in the offensive zone, you're trying to make a play, and you turn it over, and you give up an odd man the other way. That's kind of sort of what happened, but I think actually the bigger mistake, it was less the turnover and more the tracking back. Because if you watch the replay, I mean, it was Kucherov. Kucherov got stripped. Okay. Not an ideal place on the ice to get stripped. But the Lightning are actually okay coming back for maybe the first little bit. Nazar has a little bit of a lead on Moser, who's trying to get back defensively. Moser at least forces him a little bit wide, so the shot is one that Vasilevsky can stop, which he does. But Nazar's smart. He shoots to the far pad, which is going to create a rebound to the other side. And if you watch the replay, Kucherov does not take Donato. Donato is the only dangerous guy for Chicago at that point. There's no other Hawk near the offensive zone once Nazar takes that shot. And Kucherov, he kind of glided once he reached the defensive zone, and he didn't go to the man. If he is coming back, as they say, kind of like determined with a purpose and taking the guy, I mean, who knows if Donato gets the goal. So it was a combination of the turnover and the tracking. That was a huge mistake. And unfortunately, it took away from what I thought was Nikita Kucherov's best game of the year by a country mile. He looked like Kucherov. He had 2 assists. I mean, Connor Murphy must have, I don't know if he had a rabbit's foot in his back pocket, but Kucherov made that move in the first period, and he walked past 3 Hawk players. Murphy had no clue where the puck was, and it hit him in the skate. Murphy's like, where is it? Where is it? If Kucherov gets that puck past the stick, I mean, and he scores, that is a That is going to be one of the highlights of the season. So that's how Kucherov was going last night, and it's just unfortunate that the game ended that way because it took away from what I thought was a really, really strong performance from number 86, and he is 1 point away from 1,000. But it was a costly mistake for sure. The other thing I'll say about the part of the Lightning's game that I wasn't as crazy about, I don't think the Hawks generated much in zone. We've had some questions about the Lightning's D zone, like what's the D zone, the system. Like, I mean, if you watch what Chicago did offensively, most of what they got was off the rush. The Lightning had some rush coverage issues last night. They gave up some odd mans. Even the Donato goal that we weren't crazy about with Vasilevsky is a chance off the rush. I mean, he's on his strong side, and Vasi left that short side open. But it was a turnover in the offensive zone, and the Lightning, were a little bit in scramble mode coming back defensively. So really, it was the mistake at the end of the game, and they had some leaky moments on rush coverage. Other than that, I thought the Lightning did really, really well. And they could have scored 8 goals last night. I mean, they had 4 goalposts, Greg. They generated enough to win.
Yeah.
And, we're going to say, well, the Lightning gave up this chance. Well, the Hawks gave up chances too. How about Holmberg and Gord in the third period? Was that a 3-on-1?
Mm-hmm.
Knight makes 2 really good saves there. So, look, both teams made mistakes. Where the Lightning are right now, though, you kind of feel like they're going to need to play better than just well. They're going to need to play exceptionally well to get rewarded just the way things are going, and then hopefully things start clicking into place, and you just need to play well enough. If you play well enough, you're going to win. Right now, they play well enough. It's not enough, and that's the way it goes sometimes.
They almost need to play a perfect game, and you know where I feel on that and where I come down on that. But that's kind of where we think the Lightning are right now, is that they are doing some good things, but it does feel like the mistakes they are making, it's coming back to hurt them. And to overcome that, you really need to play an exceptional game. And I don't know if they've done that so far this year. They've played some decent games. They may even played a couple of good games. But their mistakes are hurting them, maybe at an unusually higher rate right now. I say penalties have been an issue. Lilleberg specifically. I mean, a couple of there. I thought they were going to have some momentum killing off in that third period, the penalties that they did take. And sometimes that can lead to some momentum. I thought they had a shoot-first mentality early on in the game. You saw the defenseman, firing away. I thought that was encouraging. But, these mistakes, these costly mistakes at the wrong times is hurting them. And I think collectively, while Kucherov had himself, was it his best offensive game from start to finish in terms of making an impact? I thought it was his most
dynamic game.
Yeah, so
offensively.
But that's been maybe 1 or 2 performances from a star player this year that's had those traits. Hagel's, he's been hitting some posts, but he hasn't been able to break through yet. It was actually a
save. I mean, Knight barely got a piece of that, and then it hit the top of the pad and hit the post in the second period.
So he's battling some bad luck. Braden Point is not where he needs to be. Victor Hedman is not contributing where he usually is. Sorelli, I would even throw him in there, and I think these are things that are happening. Had a good night in the circle,
though. I mean, we've been talking about so many things, Greg. The Lightning turned around 60? Last night. They went 31-20 in the circle. This may be unofficial because I'm not looking it up online.
I think they changed it again.
Went. You're probably right. They changed the shots on this sheet to the one that I checked the shots. They gave the Hawks 1 extra shot.
Of course,
but Sorelli went 13-4 in the faceoff circle.
Yeah, I mean, so that's impressive.
Yeah, very impressive.
That's impressive. It's just, collectively, you're not used to seeing your 5 best forwards struggle offensively at the same time. And even though Kucherov had himself a dynamic game, usually a couple of guys are making an impact. And that's just not happening. We'll get to Dominic James because I do think he showed well. And I actually think for the first time, it felt like the fourth line had some pushback offensively. The one shift, Chafee, James, and Douglas all had a shot on goal.
Yeah.
And that was nice to see.
Douglas had a chance to score on it. I mean, it was a great feed from James. It was in the second period. And I think he missed the net, but it was right in his wheelhouse, a one-timer.
Right. That if that gives you any indication of what the fourth line potentially could do compared to what it was doing, you'll take that performance every single time. Than what we have been seeing.
Yeah, look, I mean, 1 win in 7 games, coming off another home loss. They're 0-3 at home to start the year. You go back to the playoffs last year against Florida. They've lost their last six games at home.
Yeah.
And that is tough. And then you're a minute away from getting a point. You make a mistake in the final minute. You come away with nothing. It's very easy to feel that this team is spinning its wheels, and it's frankly very easy to dump on this team. And what we try and do on this show is look at things as fairly and honestly as we can. So I gave you some of the things that I didn't really care for last night. The list was fairly small, honestly. One goal that Vasi would like back, the mistake at the end of the game, and probably a few too many chances off the rush for Chicago. But look at kind of the stats at the end of the game kind of tell us the machinery of the game, like what was operating well for one team and maybe less well for the other.
Right.
So the Lightning outshot the Hawks 31-25. Shot attempts 73-48 Tampa Bay. They out-attempted the Hawks in all 3 periods. The fact that they out-attempted the Blackhawks in the 3rd period is impressive when you consider the Blackhawks had 4 power plays in the 3rd period. They had a power play when Radish got called for holding that bled into a 5-on-3 when Gord was called for a double minor, and then Lilleberg took a penalty later. Now, that was a shorter one because the Hawks got called for a penalty themselves, but still, they had a lot of power play time. They had numerous opportunities to rack up lots of shots and lots of shot attempts, and the Lightning still out-attempted them in the 3rd period. Just told you about the face-offs. The Lightning did very well in the circle, which helped them have possession. I think if you were to track scoring chances, the Lightning had more scoring chances than Chicago. The Lightning were certainly way, way more unlucky than Chicago. 4 goalposts, not to mention the one that banked off the end wall in the first period, came right in front. Knight has no idea where it is. It easily could hit his leg and go in the net. Remember the goal that Vasi allowed in Boston? Was it in Boston? I'm trying to remember which, or maybe it was the Ottawa. It was the Ottawa game where Zub shot it, hit the post, came back, hit Vasilevsky in the leg. That did not happen to Spencer Knight. Spencer Knight is standing there. The puck slides right past him. Braden Point's right in front of the net prior to that. Gets a centering. It was Kucherov centered it. I mean, 9 times out of 10, Point gets that puck on net, skipped right past his stick. So some of this is, as Julian often says, the randomness of hockey. The random parts of last night's game all went in the Lightning's face. And in spite of that, they did well to kind of control the narrative. They were at the rudder. So all of that is positive. How much of this was impacted by them maybe getting healthy? We know Kucherov was sick. Maybe some other guys were battling illness as well. They're feeling a little bit better. I think McDonough and Chernak had a strong game, which is very positive. They saw a lot of the top skilled guys on the Hawks and handled it well. McDonough himself had a goal, his 3rd of the year. He had 4 all of last year and an assist. And I want to mention James. Mm-hmm. This guy belongs in the NHL. He's an NHLer. What his exact role will be in the NHL, that's not for me to answer, but you referred to him as a guy on the 4th line. John Cooper was bumping him up to the Gord line on occasion. He really had him take faceoffs, but it's not like he took the faceoff and went off the ice.
Sure.
So he kind of spotted Bjorkstrand. At one point I was like, is Bjorkstrand injured? But he wasn't. He came right back out for his next shift. That was just coach's choice. And so Phil has talked about centers who can play wing. I have said, I think for a guy like James, who looks good at center, you want to keep him at center. I made that point on the show yesterday. Mm-hmm. Yanni Gord is a guy who can play center and wing. We've seen him play both. I mean, we'll see. To me, Dominic James deserves to be in the NHL and should be in the NHL. The Lightning should be playing this guy. It's not my decision to make. It's Julian's decision where the players end up or down. It's John Cooper's decision who dresses, where the player is. I'm just giving you my opinion, having watched this guy in preseason and watched him last night in his NHL debut. He did not look like a guy playing his first NHL game. He looked like a guy who knows exactly what he needs to do at the NHL level, whether this was game 1, 20, 70, it doesn't matter. He did what we saw him do in the preseason. And he seemed completely unaffected by the fact that he was taking on, an opposition roster that was full of NHLers. Okay. So who knows? Maybe the Lightning mix up the lines again. They're like, James can play on the third line. And if they're going to move Bjorkstrand, maybe they bump Bjorkstrand up. I mean, we've talked about him maybe being in the top 6. Gonzalez is struggling. He hit the post yesterday, but, he is not really picked up where he left off last year, unfortunately. I mean, part of that is Hagel is struggling, and Cirelli has had his moments, but Cirelli has not been able to impact games as regularly as he usually does, and probably as much as the Lightning need him to. So who knows? I mean, I'm not saying that the Lightning are going to make these moves. I'm just saying what I saw last night. James was not locked in on the fourth line. He helped the fourth line when he was out there, but he also helped the third line, and they put him out there with the third line.
I think
you got options.
I think, honestly, what would be an interesting move is to start James on the second line tomorrow.
As a center or a wing?
Probably a wing at this point.
Yeah.
At this point.
You mean subbing him and putting him out? So they had Kucherov with Cirelli and Hagel at the start of the game, but by the end of the game, Kucherov was with Point and Gensel, and Gonçalves was back with Cirelli and Hagel.
Yeah.
So you were saying Cirelli, Hagel, and James as a line. Yeah.
Correct. So Gabby tweeted just moments ago she doesn't see Hagel or Gord on the ice for practice. And she said, obviously, Crozier and Paul are missing too. So
hopefully just body maintenance.
Yeah, that can happen.
Yanni,
I don't know.
Yanni has played well. I mean, we've talked about guys that are struggling. I think Yanni Gord has been fantastic.
I'd like to see Bjorkstrand.
Took a penalty. I mean, the penalty notwithstanding last night.
I'd like to see Bjorkstrand get going. That's another guy. We talk about the depth scoring. He's kind of in that. He might be the
He hit the post last night, Greg.
The higher tier of the role players because of his pedigree. You know what it is too, partner? It's unusual for so many of these scorers to struggle at the same time. I think that's the part that's a little befuddling.
Mm-hmm.
Usually it's a couple, but it's like everybody is. So, in that instance, when you have more than a couple, I think you do start to find some ways to mix and match quicker than you would, which is the reason why I suggested moving James up maybe to start tomorrow. Let's see what he can do.
Yeah, I mean, there's no guarantee he's going to be in tomorrow, Greg. I'm just telling you, that
goes to show you.
Night.
That goes to show you, though, how we feel about him, though. To me, there's no question he should be in the lineup tomorrow. I mean, for him not to be in the lineup, I think that's Nick Paul's made a miraculous comeback.
Well,
that would be
Gergenson's, right? Gergenson's
yeah, but still,
I would
sit somebody. I would sit somebody else. That's what I would do. I think James, to your point, is an NHLer. You find a way to get the guy in the lineup because everything he did last night, I'm not telling you he was perfect.
Yeah.
He did more in limited ice time from that role than anybody else who has been there as well. So
he went 5-5 in the circle, which you have to be able to at least hold your own in the circle if you were going to play center, right? And assuming you're going to play center and take faceoffs.
Right.
I mean, technically somebody else could take the faceoff and you just slot in at center. But nearly all of his faceoffs were against Nick Foligno, who we talked about on the show yesterday. I mean, Foligno is a veteran guy. Is he a guy who's normally winning like 57% of his faceoffs? No, but I mean, James hung in there against a veteran NHL guy who knows how to win faceoffs and has been doing it for a very long time. James went 5-5 in the circle last night.
Partner, there's nothing
he held his own.
There's nothing he did last night that would say he needs to come out. I'd keep him in.
Yeah.
And then from there you can figure out who else you would sit if you feel like Gergensons is ready to go. So the other thing too is he brought some life to the lineup. What have we been talking about? It feels like there's not going through the motions, but it's a little bit more baseline. I want to see somebody bring in that energy, and I think James did. So I don't want to make it sound like this guy's going to win Rookie of the Year and he's going to score 30 goals this year. Based off of where the team is and what his play has been like, not only at Syracuse, but his first game in the National Hockey League last night, I think he deserves to have another opportunity to play. And if that means moving him up to the second line, I'm all for it. And then from there, you can make some decisions based off of how people played. I think that's okay to make those decisions. Landon says the season is looking a little bleak with this record. Gotta limit the turnovers, penalties, and D-zone breakdowns. Love the amount of shots on goals. Pucks just wouldn't go in.
Well,
That's
if you're
fair.
going to eclipse 30 shots on net and eclipse 70 attempts on a fairly regular basis, you are going to be scoring more than 2 goals a game. They had a little bit of bad luck last
They did.
night.
They're hitting posts, and eventually that'll be righted.
Well, they're hitting posts as in last night.
Yeah.
Prior to last night, they were not doing enough,
Sure.
which we talked about at length, to generate enough looks.
Right, they just
honestly.
weren't shooting enough.
They weren't shooting enough. Not enough shots. Not enough attempts. Right. As far as the D zone breakdown, so I'm not going to disagree with the turnovers and some.
You think
of it.
that's a blanket statement?
So yeah, so like the odd mans that the Hawks got, or at least the rush chances that they got, some of them were turnovers. Some of them were just guys got caught a little bit out of position. There were a couple of times I think defensemen got caught a little low, and it wasn't a turnover. It was just their positioning in the offensive zone did not allow them to get back to prevent a rush chance. So that's why I said I thought it was a little bit of a problem last night. I mean, Vasi made a save early in the game on a 2-on-1 on Mikheyev, right? Mm-hmm. There was the one, I can't remember if this was a turnover where Hagel lifted the stick of Doc, but that was after Foligno had a chance. That was an odd man. That might have been from the red line in. I can't remember how that play started, but there was a shot and a rebound, and Doc looked like he was there to tap it in, and Hagel tied him up, saved a goal, probably. That's where the Hawks were getting their looks. It wasn't so much, like when you say D-zone breakdowns, they had a little bit of a breakdown in the penalty kill on the Nazar goal. Okay, that was a breakdown. That was a well-executed play by Chicago. We didn't see a lot of that, though. Like when the Hawks had the puck in the offensive zone, they didn't have a lot in the offensive zone. I think the Lightning did well. Like they limited chances. I can't remember if you had anything else in there, but I mean, I agree with the amount of pucks directed to the net was a good sign. They just didn't get rewarded enough last night.
No, I think you covered everything there. Aaron says 2 things that stood out. James is ready for the NHL, and Moser is the best D-man, and it doesn't even feel close.
Well, Moser had another strong game last night. I thought some of the other D matched him, honestly, which is a good sign. I think that's one reason why the Lightning had not many chances against, honestly, last night. Phil made him a star. I think Phil would have made Kucherov a star except for what happened at the end of the game. So he's like, I want to pick another Lightning player. So Moser had a play, and this again was off the rush. I think it was Nazar. Phil said Bedard. I think it was Nazar was almost in the clear, and Moser disrupted him. This was earlier in the third period, and Phil referenced that play and said that's why I made him a star. And he was caught in kind of a tough spot there. Teravainen made a really nice pass on the winning goal that sent Nazar away, and Moser is scrambling to get back. I mean, I thought he did as well as he could do in that situation to force the player a little bit more wide and force him to take the shot where he took it, and Vasi made the save. The problem ensued after that because the Lightning didn't get back on Donato.
Do you think?
So I agree. I thought Moser had another good game.
Do you think Lilleberg is potentially in danger of sitting the next game or two, considering some of the penalties he's starting to rack up, and the fact that the team has gotten off to a slow start, avoiding some of those self-inflicted wounds? Cooper even referenced it, I think, on the post-game show.
Somebody asked him about
stick, right?
Somebody asked him about Lilleberg because Cooper said we're taking too many penalties.
Right.
He was asked about Lilleberg. He didn't single out Lilleberg, but what he said was, if you're taking the body and you're getting called for a penalty, those are more the penalties you can live with. It's the stick foul. So Lilleberg had 2 minors last night. One was interference, which led to the Nazar power play goal. That was not a stick foul. I mean, look, he did step in front of the guy. It looked like it was maybe borderline just battling, but the officials decided to call it. The one in the third period, though, he got the stick up for sure. So that's not exactly what John Cooper is looking for. They have the extra defenseman. They have Destu. I maintain, I don't think they called up Destu to have him like practice and
bold prediction
and be exposed to the NHL life for a week. I think they brought him up to play him, but it wasn't last night.
I think he plays tomorrow. I think Lilleberg sits. I would move Janes up to the second line. Bold predictions here. We'll see. Keep them coming.
Yeah.
I don't think they're crazy ideas. Clearly, we've been talking about some of these things for a little bit. Do you guys think Cooper's message is getting stale with the players? This team makes a lot of undisciplined mistakes, and the timing of them are the worst. I don't know.
Yeah. So the thing about John Cooper has been the head coach of the Tampa Bay Lightning for, I'll say, a long time. I mean, relative to the usual like effectiveness of an NHL coach, Coop is a guy who has been here longer than most. The thing to keep in mind is that he doesn't have the same players that he had in 2013. I mean, other than Victor Hedman, who else is? I mean, Kucherov came that year, but was in and out. Right? He was up. He started down. He was up. He got scratched for 2 games in the playoffs. I'm going back to Coop's first full year, and yes, Kuch was a regular after that. But I don't know. I mean, it's not like it's the same players. So I don't know about the message getting stale.
So here's what I'll say to that.
I think the Lightning played a spirited game last night. That reflects well on whatever the coach's message was. Whatever the message was, it got through because they played, I'll call it, winning hockey last night. They didn't win because they made some isolated mistakes and costly mistakes at key times, and they got unlucky offensively. Right. But they played well enough to win. They had a compete that was high enough to win. And if you're going to say, well, the coach's message is getting stale, how do you explain what you saw last night?
John Cooper has earned the right to give him the benefit of the doubt when a slow start like this happens and mistakes are occurring, to not suggest that he's lost his team or the locker room, because that's usually the phrase people will go there. Check back with us in January, and if the Lightning are still muddling along, I think you can have a more serious question about that topic, but not after the year they had last year. I think that's a convenient excuse when you've had a coach be at a place for a long time and a team gets off to a slow start. The message, that's low-hanging fruit, and I'm not saying that's not incorrect eventually, but we're not there. You have to let this play out. If you think John Cooper's a Hall of Fame coach, which I think we all agree, you've got to not judge this off of 7 games.
Yeah.
You've got to give him time to work his magic. And quite frankly, at this point, yes, the coaching staff is lumped in with the players, but you're looking at the leadership to turn this around. Coach can only do so much. Lead by example. The Stars are struggling a bit. Those guys get going, John Cooper's going to look real smart. And that's usually how it works in sports.
And I'll just mention, so we had Braden Coburn on, was it 2 days ago?
Yeah.
So they had 2 full practices before an optional skate yesterday. They had a full practice on Tuesday. They had a full practice on Wednesday. Kobe said he went to the full practice on Tuesday. I did not. But I did go to the beginning part, and I probably about half to 2/3 of the practice I was at on Wednesday. What Kobe said he saw on Tuesday was a lot of attention to detail. Like, not just letting them go through a drill if they don't get it quite right, like stopping the drill, do it again, right? That's how a coach can get the message through. And I saw many of the same things on Wednesday. So the result was a game where they were much better in the details of the game. You don't out-attempt a team by 25 when you're on the wrong end of the penalty kill metric, time shorthanded, really. You don't out-attempt a team by 25 if the details of your game aren't kind of in order. Now, the fans might say, well, what about the mistakes they made? Yeah, they made mistakes. And they made a critical mistake at the end of the game. But you know who else made mistakes? The Blackhawks did. Mm-hmm. Like, hockey is a game of mistakes. So I'm not going to disagree that, like, if you're in the final minute of a tied game in the third period, you have to ensure that that game gets to overtime. They didn't do it. They have to wear that. They have to eat it. It's done, right? They can't There are no moral victories, as they said after the game.
No.
But what we can do is look at how they played, and for the bulk of the 60 minutes, they were on the right side of things. That's positive based on where they were before, when they were not on the right side of things.
You're right. The other thing, too, is you have to keep this in perspective. Who was I talking about this last night? I think it was actually my uncle a little bit. If this was a 17-game season and this start was equivalent to going 0-5.
Yeah, like the NFL, you mean.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Their panic would ensue, and you would be talking about firing coaches and messages being lost and shakeups happening. 82-game season, you really do have to control being very emotional with your analysis of a team who has been a very good team for over a decade. I know that the tendency is to go down that path, but this is where you do have to have some trust. And if you don't have trust that this team can turn it around, or belief that they can turn this around, you're going to have a negative viewpoint on all of it. It's actually, in life in general, I think that's not a good way to go through things, is to constantly feel like the worst is going to happen. The Lightning are struggling. This is an 82-game season. They could go on a run, partner, where they go 6-1 in their next 7, and we're not having these questions anymore. So 82-game season, you give this a little bit more leeway to get it figured out. This was a 17-game schedule, and you start 0-6 or 1-7. Yes, it's going to be different. The reaction should be different. We're not there yet, nor should we be. Rob78, go ahead.
Let me just add one thing, and we had a question. I think it was from our friend Jim in Jacksonville, who was very clued into the schedule, and Jim had asked before the season started about October with the back-to-backs, and I was like, yeah, October is it's not necessarily jumping out at me as a particularly difficult schedule. Now that we went through the 2 back-to-backs, I'm like, yeah, that was tricky. I mean, they got 4 points out of the 8 games. And I'm like, look, now they're home basically for the rest of the month. So I'm not going to like reverse my earlier statement about Jim's point about the beginning of the season, which he felt was challenging. And I'm like, okay, it was moderately challenging. What made the situation worse was that the Lightning have not gotten points. So you factor in these 2 back-to-backs with 3 home losses that were not back-to-backs, and they are where they are. There is no disputing that in January and coming out of the Olympic break, though, those are the 2 toughest stretches the Lightning are going to have in the schedule. It is going to be hard for them, not impossible. I mean, Carolina went on, feels like Carolina's on a 12-game road trip. I mean, they played their first game at home. I don't know if they played every Western team on the road. It's like they're still on the road. They played Colorado last night. I think they're coming home. They did extraordinarily well. I think they only lost 1 game on the entire road trip, okay? That is rare. When you have lots of games on the road and the schedule is condensed and you're bouncing all over the place, okay? It is going to be tough for the Lightning to just roll right through January and go through that stretch after the Olympic break where they are on the road a lot, condensed schedule, longer trips, leaving the time zone. I think in that March stretch, they go out to Western Canada. So if we understand now that those 2 stretches are going to be tricky, it creates even more urgency to make sure you're getting points today, right? Because you know that you can say, well, we got all this time. Yes, and I know that we don't say that a lot. I mean, you kind of said it, that it's 7 games and it's not a 17-game season. It's an 82-game season. So there is plenty of runway. That is all true. You don't want to fall too far behind. That's also true. What I'm saying is that there are going to be some legit heavy lifts.
Oh, yeah.
Later in the season.
No doubt.
That if you are still muddling along through this part of the schedule where it's not as heavy a lift, then you are creating a very, very disadvantageous situation for yourself.
Listen, the more games you go without getting any points, the harder it's going to be to make them up.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. I think also, too, in the back of my mind, we've got to see how the Eastern Conference plays out, but I'm still not convinced there is a top dog per se that's so much better than everybody else. I do think there's going to be some parity.
Yeah, the Atlantic, I'm not sure that. I mean, Montreal right now looks like the most consistent team, and they've done a lot of damage in overtime. where they've,
Yeah.
cashed in.
That also
But-
is going to play a factor in this. So let's not be
Yeah.
as hyperbolic.
Sorry, Rob78, that I cut
Yes.
off your question a second
He said,
ago.
watching the game, you could just tell Cooch is off, not clean and crisp with his puck handling and a really bad turnover to end the game. The turnover part, I agree with you. That was a tough one. But I thought you and I, partner, looked at that and said, for the most part, that was a pretty good game from Kucherov.
Yeah, I agree. He was on it. Like, he was.
Yeah, I mean-
he made Chicago uncomfortable
Yeah,
last night.
I agree. Could you say, Rob, he's looked a little off the previous games? I think we can meet you halfway there. I think that's fair. What's Greg say? Hey, guys, thanks for the show. Boy, I'm getting sick of watching Lilleberg play on this team. Kucherov's poor defensive effort and inability to close games. I gave you
We're
my
laughing
thoughts.
because there was a little bit of a
Yeah.
naughty word in there that you
Yeah.
didn't read. We're not laughing about what happened at the end.
Begins with well, I'm not even going to say because you could go various ways with that if I start giving you letters. I like Lilleberg. I think Lilleberg's part of this team. That being said, I do know how these things work sometimes. And a young guy who has taken a couple of penalties over the last handful of games and has put his team in a tough situation oftentimes finds himself in the press box for a game or two. I think that could happen tomorrow. I have no inside knowledge. That's where I would go. And if I'm wrong, I hope Lilleberg comes out and has a great game because I like him. I think he's physical. And I think there's a component to what he does that this team doesn't have as much. Tampa Bay says, how many more penalties does it need to take for Coop to finally not play Lilleberg? Look, I know it's easy to pile on him. I think he knows that. Lilleberg knows he's taking penalties. At some point, you're going to have to make a decision to sit him. I think to just decompress a little bit. You always hear that with the young player. Maybe watch a game from the stands. That's just a way that's articulated to the player. If it was me, I would make that move tomorrow. Testu, see what he can do. That's where I would go.
I just want to add one thing about this, pile on Lilleberg. So look, he has taken a lot of minor penalties, and he is more than any other player put the Lightning shorthanded. And I'm not sure that he has had the sort of start to the season that he would have wanted even when he's not in the penalty box. But to somehow suggest, I'm not sure the fans are suggesting this direct line, but I'm going to take this line just as a point of kind of connecting the dots and looking at the overall picture. Emil Lilleberg is not the reason why the Lightning only have one win in their 7 games. It's not as though whatever you're going to look at, 17 of the 18 skaters are all pulling on the rope in sync, and this one guy is causing all the problems, right? This has been team-wide. They have not dictated play enough up until last night. They have not dictated play enough as a whole this year. So I don't think that is only landing on one player. But players can sometimes become a lightning rod for fans. The Lightning are the only team to have this amongst their fan base. I see it sometimes with other fan bases where, fans do focus on a player and they're like, this guy, if he's not the reason, like we need to change. And my cautionary tale is the Rangers last year. I mean, look, we're going to see Jacob Trouba tomorrow. I know you have strong feelings about Jacob Trouba. I like Jacob Trouba as a player. Mm-hmm. I think he sometimes does toe the line or cross the line with some of his hits. He became, I think, in the Ranger fan base, and unfortunately, this was also true with management. Unfortunately for the Rangers, it may not have been unfortunate for Trouba because maybe he's in a better spot in Anaheim. Sure. It was like, this guy's the problem. He's the problem. He's our captain. He's not leading. From what I heard, he's a great captain. But the Rangers moved on from him. Well, where are they now?
They've also moved on from a number of those players.
They've moved on
so
from a number of players, but he was remember they tried to move him in the summer?
He was the first guy to go.
And so it's almost like, well, if we only move on from him. Now, look, Jacob Trouba had a much bigger role with the Rangers than Lilleberg does with the Lightning. I'm not suggesting the fans are saying move on from Lilleberg, but fans are frustrated. The fans that are reaching out to us about Lilleberg are frustrated. okay? And you may be right. Maybe Destu is in tomorrow for Lilleberg. But what was I saying yesterday about the weak link sport? Like, pulling one guy out of the lineup is only going to have so much of an impact just based on how the sport is played. And the opposite is also true. One guy in the lineup is only going to have so much impact on how a game is played. So Emil Lilleberg is not the reason why the Lightning only have one win through 7 games. Would he like to have taken fewer penalties? Yes. Would he like to have had more of an impact on the games where he's been on the ice? I'm sure he has. Would like to have had more of an impact. But that's just kind of my take, that maybe it's a little unfair to be just focusing all the energy on this one player.
Dusty the dog. I know everyone will be down on Lilleberg, but we need him. Look at the age of the other left D. Of course, he has to do better.
Well, that's a more nuanced take, Dusty the dog. So I don't know if you wrote that after hearing what I said, or you had that already.
He had
like
that already
ready to
there.
go.
Yeah,
he had that already. Yeah. So
I
mean, he and I are kind of in simpatico on that. He does need to be better, but
so does everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just him.
I think it's the penalties, because to a degree you can control that. I think that's part of the. And he's not Nikita Kucherov. You're not going to sit Kuch.
So if we're just looking at impact of these penalties, could it potentially hurt the Lightning because you're taking them off, maybe going on offense? The Lightning haven't scored a shorthanded goal this year. Okay, you can make that argument. One of the penalties he took last night did lead to a power play goal for Chicago. But, I mean, the Lightning have only allowed 3 power play goals all year. How many of these Lilleberg penalties have resulted in a goal against? If we're actually going to say, he's taking all these penalties, like, how many of them actually hurt the Lightning on the scoreboard? I know it's not, you're shaking your head. I know it's not ideal. You don't want him taking these penalties, but if you're like, he's the reason, like, these penalties, the Lightning have killed most of them off.
Well, it's more a flow game.
Well, that's what I was saying.
You get out of sorts.
But even when they've been 5-on-5, the flow of game has been a problem up until last night.
Look, when you struggle, all bets are off. He's going to John Cooper, we didn't think Connor Geekie was going to get sent down.
Yeah.
And Dominic James summoned so quickly. I think the next things to come are shakeups in the top 6, not meaning you're benching people, although if James replaces Gonçalves, you could do a swap there, or you could sit Gonçalves. I think that's fair game. I also think it's fair game to look at your defense core and say, it's probably easy to identify the guy who's taking more penalties. He's not playing as many minutes. Let's give the guy we just called up from Syracuse an opportunity. I think those are things that you can do, hoping that the big boys just get their act together. I mean, that's a big part of all of this. I don't want to, overanalyze it.
And let me just go on the record and say this, Greg. I want to see Destu. And if Destu coming in means Lilleberg sits, like, I want to see this guy play because I really liked what I saw from him in the preseason.
I think
he's a very interesting history, too. Yeah. Like, he was named the best defenseman in the Swedish Hockey League last year. The year he was in the ECHL, which was earlier in his career, he was named the best defenseman in the ECHL. I mean, I know it's not the NHL, but those are some very impressive accomplishments.
You gotta compete wherever you're competing and play well. I mean, I don't care if it's a beer league or I don't care if it's in the AHL or the ECHL. Go dominate. It sounds like he did that. I think he's in tomorrow. That's my personal take. Thomas says Chicago was never uncomfortable in their zone last night. Never had to scramble. Also, the powerless play is pathetic right now.
Does he mean the power play?
I think he's saying powerless, so it's playoff where it's there.
Yeah, I disagree, Thomas. I do think the Hawks were made uncomfortable in their own zone. I mean, when you see a shot hit off the post, that is an uncomfortable feeling, and it happened 4 times last night. So I don't think they got rattled. I don't think that they were scrambling around like no idea what to do. I think Jeff Blashill's done a nice job of kind of keeping their heads level when the other team is pressing. Remember, they've been outshot a lot this year. So what were the final shots, did I say? 31-25, and I said the differential was about 7 for Chicago. On average, they were getting outshot by 7 each game. So that's why I said yesterday, I think the Lightning, if they play the way we want to see them play, They should get some looks, but they're going to have to dig in to try and beat Spencer Knight. That's kind of how it unfolded, right? So the Hawks have spent a lot of time in their own zone this year based on these shot numbers. They spent a lot of time in their own zone last night.
Yeah.
But having to defend that much, the Lightning had scoring chances, Thomas. So I think they had more chances than Chicago last night.
That's fair.
Yeah, not in the first period. First period, Chicago, I think, had more scoring chances. But by the end of the game, I think the Lightning had more.
Dio says Cooper cannot use Cooch late in games until Cooch decides that he's going to play defense. He is a great defender when he wants to be. Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you have an empty net, this is more when the other team is pressing, which is such a valuable weapon. I'll leave that up to Cooper. I mean,
right.
If they're protecting a lead and Kucherov's not out there, that's fine. If that's his way of, I don't want to say disciplining him by not putting him out there because of what's happened recently. He's a weapon because he can score from his own blue line, and he can make those subtle passes. So I don't know if that's the argument I'm going to make completely when it comes to Cooch, but that is what it is. Chris says another frustrating loss with defensive breakdowns and bad penalties. Lilleberg with 2 more bad penalties, now 7 in 7 games. Destu has to be in on Saturday.
So where we, I think, are all in agreement is that if Destu is in, he's coming in for Lilleberg. That's where I think we're landing here. I know there's some variation in the opinion about everything else, but look, Coop is not happy with the penalties. And the fans that are pointing out Lilleberg taking these penalties, like, that is true. You can just look at the stat sheet and see that that is the case. I was simply trying to point out that to lay where the Lightning are all on the feet of one player is inaccurate and unfair.
No, and I don't think we're suggesting that either.
Yeah.
By the way, tonight, enjoy some Reef Rum. Smooth, versatile, and now pouring at Benchmark International Arena. Order a Tropical Wave or a Lightning Mule and taste why fans are switching. Reef Rum is a premium craft Florida local rum built on authenticity, quality, and easy drinkability. Ask for Reef Rum by name. Go Bolts! Enjoy responsibly, as you should.
Yes, back-to-back this weekend. Do you think Johansson gets the game tomorrow? Do you think they split because they're at home? Do you think Johansson gets Anaheim and Vasi gets Vegas?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Vegas has got some injury problems. I saw Aiden Hill is injured, and Mark Stone is on LTIR, which I know
I feel
is
like he's always in. That's
right
not a shock.
for a lot of jokes.
Jeez.
Usually not in October, though.
Right.
He did get injured. I saw the play. So the Lightning see Vegas twice in whatever it is, a week plus. Yeah. So they are not going to be seeing Mark Stone. They are not going to be seeing Aiden Hill in the season.
I don't think
series.
it matters.
They will be seeing Mitch Marner and Eichel and Dorofeev. And, I mean, Vegas has been scoring a lot of goals this year.
I think Vasi gets that game. Now, some would say, do you try and get the Shore win tomorrow with your star?
Anaheim scored 7 in Boston.
They did.
Yeah.
My spidey sense goes Vasi on Sunday. Johansson tomorrow, but we've all made mistakes. Tampa Bay Knight made timely saves while Vasi didn't.
Yeah, Tampa Bay, I'm going to disagree there. Vasi didn't see as many shots, and I'm not sure Knight gave up a goal like Vasi did on the Donato goal in the second period. So granted, yes. But the Hawks had some isolated looks, and Vasi stopped them. Vasi makes the first save on Nazar.
Yeah.
That last goal against is not on Andrei Vasilevsky. How about that play during the 4-on-4 where Hagel tried to pass it to McDonough behind the net, and it hit McDonough's skate, came to Ryan Green as a rookie. He was absolutely alone in front, and Vasi kept the puck out.
Yeah.
I thought Vasi made some timely saves. Sorry, Tampa Bay.
It
I'm
happens.
just checking to make sure they gave Green a shot on that. Yeah.
Boomer had this question. This is an interesting one. He did some digging here. He said, Hagel hit 13 post crossbars in 82 games last year. This year he has 5 in 7. Clearly some bad puck luck. Is there anything to the bad luck, or is this just how the game is? Thanks for the show.
Well, if you're hitting posts, that's bad luck.
Yeah.
how many other chances has he gotten? He's gotten some. Usually he and Cirelli get shorthanded chances, and they haven't had quite as many early this year. But I thought he played well last night. I mean, he was pulling on the rope. He had some looks.
It's just, Cirelli, I don't think has popped as much offensively. Hagel's he's not been as dynamic. That's the only word I can use. When I say dynamic, making things happen pretty consistently throughout game in and game out. Why
That's
it's
fair.
not happening this year, it just hasn't happened. Chris says, after killing the 5-on-3 in Gord's double minor, I thought for sure they would be energized. Didn't feel like that happened.
There was a lot of good that got lost in the final result last night, and some of it we talked about with them driving play. The penalty killing in the third period that they did was outstanding.
Yeah.
Because the Hawks sliced them apart on that first power play and set it up for Nazar, and the Lightning made an adjustment. They did not allow much of anything during that long, especially the one that the fan just referenced, the 5-on-3 into the Gord double minor. That was outstanding penalty killing. The Hawks finished with, on my sheet here, 6 power play shots. But I think that they really only had one tremendous chance on the power play, and that was the goal.
Yeah.
So after the first one went in, I thought the Lightning really battened the hatches under major pressure. I mean, that's a 2-2 game. I understand. They gave up the goal anyway in the final minute. But at 2-2, approaching the halfway point of the third period where you have been dictating play, and now you're like, I cannot believe we just have to go on the penalty kill here. 5-on-3 for 38 seconds or whatever, bleeding into a double minor, and they got the job done. That was outstanding penalty killing. But at the end of the night, it didn't matter because they still lost in regulation.
Scott says, we're forgetting that this was considered to be a top-tier team. Moral victories are not enough. Hedman looks slow and has been a turnover machine. Cooch as well.
Well, look, we said, there are no moral victories. That's what the players said. What we are trying to point out is they played a lot better last night than in some earlier games. And normally if you play like that, you will get an actual victory as well as a moral victory. Right now it's hard to swallow, though, because they really needed points last night, and it slipped through their fingers again.
Yeah.
They had something to do with that, but they could have won the game last night. They played well enough to win the game last night.
He also wants to know what's going on with Point. It's just not... I come back again to the word dynamic. I mean, Braden Point, a game, a play or two each game has a moment where he's skating around people and it's buzzing.
Yeah.
Using
I don't
that
think
speed.
Braden has gotten, so Pointer has gotten, I mean, he's chipped in a couple of goals. He's getting some points. I mean, he might just be slightly off a point per game pace, which tells you like how talented these guys are, that even by their own admission, they're probably not doing as much as they normally do. They're still getting some points here and there. I think that how many times have we been like, Point was really dangerous in that situation and got
That's
denied.
fair.
And I think that
fair.
has not happened enough this year.
Timothy says, sadly, the Stars aren't being the Stars. I mean, I think that kind of sums up. Brian Engblom said it on the post-game show too, and that I think that comment is very similar to Brian's in that your record is what it is at this point. You are what your record is.
Yeah.
And it's just a team that hasn't found it. David, before we sign off, says, to me the biggest problem has been the zone entries, breakouts, and passing accuracy. It didn't feel like that we had this problem last year.
That is fair, David, because I agree that, it's hard to go on the attack if you can't execute up the ice and get into the offensive zone. Now, I feel like everything that we've said today, we have to add the caveat. Last night, they did a much better job of it. That's how you end up out-attempting a team 73-48. Now they need to keep it going. Anaheim has played the Lightning tough, kind of like Chicago has. I mean, Chicago has given the Lightning, since Bedard entered the NHL, the Lightning have played 5 games against the Blackhawks. The Hawks have won all 3 in Tampa. The Lightning won the 2 in Chicago. But the 2 games they won in Chicago were close games. Last year, they needed a 6 attacker goal to get the game tied, and they won in overtime. The year before, I think there was a goal fairly late in the third period. The Lightning got the lead and ended up winning. The same has kind of been true with Anaheim. I mean, I think the Lightning needed a shootout last year to beat Anaheim at home. So, and they lost the game in Anaheim. That was a 2-1. That was when they lost all 3 games in California.
Right.
And so, look, I mean, just because a team has missed the playoffs or is going to miss the playoffs. Last year, Chicago missed the playoffs and Anaheim missed the playoffs. They gave the Lightning some good games. So what the Lightning need to do is, best they can, replicate a lot of the good things that they did last night into tomorrow.
It's a 5 o'clock game.
Yes.
This
5
weekend.
o'clock, 5 o'clock.
I know. Man, like those back-to-back weekends.
Yeah.
Sound partner. So we'll have we have to tape our show on Monday. That's the
Yes,
because
because the team is flying to Nashville. That's the one road game during this stretch here.
It's what we're gonna do.
Yes.
And we're gonna break down.
Monday we will recap the weekend games and get ready for Lightning Predators on Tuesday.
Yep. That'll be fun. Still a lot of questions coming in, which we'll get to probably on Monday. I'm sure you guys will have new ones.
There may be different questions on Monday.
Yeah.
We're going to get a lot of activity.
Yeah, let's hope the Lightning win a couple, right?
Yeah.
Because it's going to be relatively the same, only with more emotion, if you know what I mean. But, partner, I will catch you tomorrow at the arena for 4:30 pregame. Good job this week.
Sounds good. You too.
Thanks to Steve Ersnick, Jared Johnston, all of you guys for listening. We always appreciate it. I am Greg Linnelli. You've been listening to Power Lunch on Lightning Radio.